Ronald Kohl was a 20-year-old young man. Ronald lives in the town of Frankfurt, Germany, with his friends and family. The Great War began in the summer of 1914. Heavily pressured by his friends, Ronald enlisted for the German army. Ronald was mainly driven by the goal of returning back to his homeland as a hero. He and his friends were deployed to France, where they lived in the trenches. This is the story of Ronald Kohl and his adventures in the trenches. It was the night before going to battle on the front line. He was terribly nervous, so he tried to settle his nerves by talking and eating with his friends. Then, all of a sudden, an infantry of rats attacked their underground cabin. The filthy rodents trod across the cabin, wiggling into everything and anything they could find. The men went into a frenzy and started terminating the rats with anything they could find, from bayonets to shovels. Apparently, when the little furry friends who visited Ronald's cabin brought another species with them, lice. The next morning, it was time for Ronald and his cabin to report to the front line. Ronald's friend, Arthur, felt severe pains in his shins and he had a scorching fever. Arthur's conditions made him unable to participate, so therefore he was carried away by the stretcher bearers to a regimental aid post, where he was injected with antibiotics in order for bed rest. Later that day, Ronald and his other friends went to go visit Arthur, since they were terribly worried about if he would be okay or if he would die. Ronald asked the doctor what was wrong with Arthur. Arthur was diagnosed with trench fever. Trench fever is curable, but it will stop Arthur from fighting any longer in the war.
The paradas are piles of sandbags that are placed on the back side of the trench to protect the soldier from bombardment that hits behind a trench and fire from the trench behind. The firing bays were sections of the trenches that were pushed forward, so if the enemy got into the trench, they could not fire down the entire length of it. The support trench is the trench that is behind the front line trench. This is where the defendants fall back to if they are overwhelmed by the enemy. The front line trench is the first trench after no man's land. This is the line that sees the most fighting against the enemy. The reserve trench is the third trench. It does not see much fighting, but is there if it needed. The forward listening post, aka SAP, is a trench into no man's land where a soldier would go to find out information about the enemy. The communication trench is the trench that connects the frontline trench and the support trench. The company HQ is where all the soldiers would go if there is constant bombardment from shell fire. No man's land is the area between the opposing trenches. This area could be miles or it could be a few hundred feet.